Hey everyone, it's Alex and welcome to Altered Academy. In this video, we're going to be discussing the Lyra Starter deck. And actually on that note, there's some actual debate as to how this is said. Is it Lyra? Is it Lyra? I've heard both things and unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be a consensus. I'm leaning towards a Lyra because Lyra used to be like an actual currency in Italy and it was spelled with an I. So I'm going to run with that. I might use them interchangeably in this video, but hey, maybe at some point it gets put into cement as to how it's pronounced. But until then, we're going to have some fun here. We're going to be talking about the starter deck. And we're going to be going through three different things. We're going to be doing a complete breakdown of each individual card, so you know what they are, how they work, and get my general impressions on them. We're going to do a little combo section. We're going to be talking about the various combos available for this deck. And then we're going to be doing a live gameplay example from Board Game Arena. Let's get started. We're going to start with our hero, as we always do, and Navakan Blotch is actually an incredibly fascinating design. It puts RNG into your hands, and if you're interested in gambling your way through a game, then this is exactly the deck and the hero for you. So essentially the way this works is that depending on what you roll, you will have a specific effect applied to a targeted character once per turn. So you can choose an individual character, you roll a dice, and if you get 6, well, it becomes anchored, which is great. If you roll 1 through 5, it gains a boost, which can also be very useful. And then finally, if you roll 1, it gets sent to reserve, which is usually the most disastrous thing that can happen. You often throw an expedition or a character that you've been trying to boost is suddenly just gone. It can be a disaster, but you know what? There are some mitigating factors here. We'll discuss one in a second, but ultimately, I think the playstyle of this deck is really fun. There's even a card that really benefits from just the act of rolling itself. This is a really fascinating deck. However, I will warn you right off the top, it is also very difficult to pilot. It has a very kind of asymmetrical statistics in forest, mountain, and water. It can make it very difficult to plan ahead with regards to the expeditions and which cards you want to reserve and which cards you want to be playing from hand. It takes a lot of practice to pilot this deck successfully. And part of the rolling here, hey, it's out of your hands. It's all RNG. But if you want to mitigate that RNG ever so slightly, there is a card that'll do that. And we're going to kind of go out of order here. But the Ouroboros Lyra Bastion, this here is an incredible landmark for this faction. The reason for it is because you're going to add an additional dice. So when you roll, you're rolling 2 dice and you get to discard, the dice that you choose. So that's perfect. Because if you roll 2 dice and you need a boost and you got a 6 and a 5, then you take the 5. If you roll the dice and you got a 1 and a 4, you take the 4. You don't send it back to reserve, right? It's really awesome because you get to ignore one roll of your choice, not just the lowest one. So if you get anchored but you needed boost, you can make that happen, right? This really takes away from the anxiety of rolling with your Navakan Blotch. And I'm glad they included it in the starter deck, because without it, this hero ability would have been much more stressful, because effectively with that landmark in play, you'd have to roll Snake Eyes to send something to reserve, which ultimately is not nearly as common. So that's a good thing. Let's talk about the other cards in the deck as well. Now, we have Asmodeus. Now, this is a little out of order here. This is the rare version, which is a 5-costed 4/4/4 that when you roll, if you get 4 and above, it gets anchored. 1 to 3, it will gain a boost. The standard version is here. It's more expensive for more stats, so a 6-costed 5/5/5. Ultimately, just a very good card. It's one of your cards that you try to close the game with. Very even stats, which is one of the only cards in your deck that has even stats. So when you anchor it, it has the opportunity to generally progress your board state, into future turns. Whereas some of the other cards, because of their very lopsided stats, might not be able to do that. So Asmodeus, a very good choice for you, especially as an anchored character. And again, you're rolling this dice first, and then you can target it again with your hero ability. So you have 2 chances to anchor it in place, which can be particularly valuable. As we move to our next card, I do love the Trickster. I think the Trickster is fantastic. It has a little bit of RNG here. Of course, it can be a 2/1/1, which is a low roll. At its baseline, a 2/2/2 is not bad. What you're really looking to do is get to the rare. You get that roll. You can get a 2-costed 3/3/3, which is just phenomenal cost for stats ratio. And yeah, you got to roll a 4 and above, sure, but generally speaking, even if you roll a 1 to 3, it's still a 2-costed 1/1. It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. And then you could target it with your hero ability and then perhaps boost it to a 2/2/2. So, very interesting card. It again, you have to embrace RNG here. You just have to embrace it. And the Ouroboros Trickster is one of the ultimate RNG cards. Then we have Hathor. Now, Hathor is somewhat unimpressive from a stats perspective. I mean, it's okay. It's 6 stats for 2, which is good. It is lopsided, as we said. It's going to be pretty common there. But where its activated ability is actually very helpful is it can combo with some other cards, especially cards that like force rolls or cards that, they want to sabotage. Basically, taking a card from reserve and putting it back into your hand. It's awesome. It's a really great effect. And so often I've had Hathor sitting in my reserve for the right card to come just to kick it out in order to ensure that I get that like extra hand gen, right? And there's a couple cards that really benefit from that. An example of that, might be Tanuki. Tanuki is the sabotage card of your hand. There are 2 versions of it, the common and the uncommon. So you can sabotage, Tanuki comes to the reserve, and then you can send it back to your hand and sabotage again. And it's very notable that the quick action does not cost mana, so you can actually do that immediately once you've kind of accomplished that quick action there. And from reserve, the rare one lets you roll for an opportunity to sabotage as well. So like this card is one of the few that has this double sabotage effect, which is pretty fascinating. Another card you might want to consider, I can't close off the screen there we go. Another card you might want to consider is the Ouroboros Croupier. I'm not sure how to say this word, but card draw is incredibly valuable in any card game. And what you can do here is you could play this out, do a roll, you either resupply or you get a full card draw. When it comes to the reserve, you can discard the Hathor to send this back to hand to do it again. The only challenge is if you resupply and this comes back and you've not played the resupply card, you might have too many things in your reserve, which makes things a little tricky, right? So just bear that in mind, your reserve size versus, what you're playing out, how much mana you have when trying to do a combo like that. But I actually like the Croupier. I think it's really strong. I think that, again, the stats are very lopsided, which is what is expected, but you are getting card advantage, you're getting hand advantage, and I think that's really valuable, especially with Lyra, because you want to have a lot of different options as to how you're going to play out the board. You're kind of bouncing all over the place here, but trust me, it's because some of the cards kind of are working together a little bit. We'll talk about it more in the combo section. The Scald, again, it's a 2-costed card with 5 stats, a little lopsided, nothing special here, just straight up vanilla stats. You can be excited about it if you want. I'm not necessarily too excited about it. Then we have Esmeralda. This is a resupply card. Resupplying is pretty helpful. It's almost like half-hand advantage because instead of having it from your hand, it goes face up. You can still play with it. It's still good. And Esmeralda does exactly that. And you have the rare version, which will resupply from the reserve as well for an additional cost of mana. So if you want to, play Esmeralda and keep kind of that flow of stuff going to the reserve, then you can do that. It's also notable that if you have Hathor sitting there, you play the Esmeralda, you resupply, you can send that resupplied card into your hand with the Hathor, right? So there's a bit of this like resupply and bounce effect, which is kind of unique to Lyra, which I think is a lot of fun. The Mage Dancer, I think, is one of the best cards in this deck, if not one of the carry cards. I really like low-costed cards that have the opportunity to scale and carry games, and the Mage Dancer does exactly that. I've seen Mage Dancers up to like 10 power on turn 2. You play it out there, it gets anchored, right? Because you roll on it. It gets a +1 because you've rolled. It also gets anchored the next turn. You play all in on it. You get a big roll for 6. It gets a +1 as well because you rolled the dice. And suddenly it's just massive, right? So this card can single-handedly win locations. And it's this general just like, oh, every time you roll, it gets a +1. It's pretty awesome, right? It's just casually boosting itself with each individual roll. And so I really do like this card. And it's so inexpensive from reserve. So you can slide it out and then you can just start playing your regular cards. Like that Croupier, for instance, if you want to draw a card and then you play it and then that gets a +1 as well, right? So there's a lot of additional stats coming out on the Mage Dancer. Absolutely love this card. It is so unbelievably good. We've talked about Tanuki. The Lyra Dancer is actually a really good card. I like this a lot. Again, when we talk about how the reserve works, a lot of people play their cards in anticipation of it going to the reserve and then, them getting to play it again, and that they kind of manage their hand in that way. It's also notable that a lot of factions have very strong effects from reserve, in particular the Axiom faction does. And so if they play a card, and then you just say, okay, well, I'm just going to fleet that. At the end of the turn, it just gets discarded. It never hits the reserve, and they never get to play that effect. So it's almost like kind of like a way to deal with card advantage, and I really do like this card a lot. It's not particularly strongly statted, but its effect is surprisingly powerful. And it's like you start to win this battle of attrition if you hit the Lyra Dancers with effectiveness over the course of the game. And then we have the Lyra against Chronicler, sorry. Again, it's just it's vanilla stats, 404 for 3. Again, it's 8 stats for 3, which is pretty damn solid. You can't argue against that necessarily, but a little lopsided and nothing overly special with regards to its effect. Again, we already talked about this card here. I do like it a lot. The Hatter, I'm actually not a huge fan of this card. The only true target for the Hatter is the Mage Dancer, which I really like because it gets boosted up and then you anchor it. But it is expensive, its stats are again lopsided, and it has to be in the reserve to activate that anchored effect, which it can do, and you pretty much have to because it's more expensive from the reserve than from hand, right? So it's one of those few cards where you're like, man, I don't want to play this from reserve, it's a disaster. But there are few targets that you can hit with this anchored effect. Again, ideally, you want to kind of beef up this Mage Dancer and then anchor it in place, but the Hatter can feel awkward to play in my experience, although the Mage Dancer is the primary target that you're looking for. And then we have the Paint Prison. There's two versions of it. This is the rare, a 4-cost that gets discounted by 1 when you discard something from the reserve. The standard version, it is a 5-costed spell that gets discounted by 2. But at the end of the day, you take a target character or permanent and you put it at the top of your opponent's deck. Not only does it remove them from the board, it also technically blocks 1 draw because they are going to draw that card and then 1 additional card instead of drawing 2 cards at the start of the turn. So instead of returning to the hand, top of the deck, very disruptive. Really like this card a lot. It can really slow down their game plan significantly, okay? So really like what Paint Prison can do, and you do have 2 versions of it. We have the out of faction rare from Ysmir, Off You Go, and yeah, it's good. Lyra needs a little bit of extra control, and I think that it benefits from it. And this card does get expensive from reserve, but its impact is very notable. Sending cards to reserve at 3 or less hand cost, very good against like Daughters of Yggdrasil. It's better to send it to hand, but like even if you just need to kind of remove stats quickly to close out turns and win the game, Off You Go can be very valuable to getting early expedition advancements. Like this card a lot. I'm glad it's in this deck. Then we have All In, which really leans into that RNG-centric side of the deck. And again, there's going to be cards like the Mage Dancer that do get buffed just by the act of rolling, but this here is just a straight-up numerical buff. In theory, you can get 6 stats for 3 costs, which is incredible. You could low roll to 2 or 1 stats for 3 costs, which is obviously not ideal. When you compare it to Nurture's targeting ability, it's okay. It can get definitely vertical based on RNG, but again, we're talking about luck. And the other side of it is, of course, All In, it does benefit from the Bastion, the Ouroboros Lyra Bastion, because if you are rolling multiple dice, you have more likelihood to get a dice that's like, okay, I rolled a 1, but I also rolled a 5, so I'll take the 5, thank you. You know what I mean? So that's why this landmark is so critical to the success of this particular deck. Now let's talk about the individual combos. While not a traditional card combo, we definitely have to start with the Ouroboros landmark because it just has such a massive influence on this deck, where its primary identifying trait is rolling dice and influencing RNG to your benefit. And yes, you can roll a Snake Eyes even with the second dice and send something back to reserve and it's a disaster, but you know what? That's way less common than with a single dice. But the key thing to note here is that like it has an impact across all the different cards and even their rare versions. So with Navaka and Blotch, obviously, let's say you need that boost in order to progress an expedition, you roll a 6. Well, you've also rolled a 2, and instead of taking the 6 for anchored, you're just going to use that 2, and you're going to get that boost. So having agency as to how you use your dice is huge for this deck. You have the Ouroboros Trickster, which is also going to have a rare version. It helps to maximize your opportunity to get those premium stats. The Croupier, it's going to maximize your opportunity to draw to your hand. Asmodeus, right? You get a better chance to get anchored, or if you need the boost to close out the game, you can do that too. All In, you have greater odds in order to get a beneficial result. You roll 2 dice, one's a 2 and the other one is a 5, then you're taking that 5. 5 stats for 3 costs, not bad. And then you have even something like Tanuki. A lot of these cards have this RNG built in where Tanuki will sabotage from hand, but from reserve you gotta roll a dice to sabotage again. And with this Ouroboros, you get 2 dice for that. So across the entire board, this does benefit you. It's a landmark you want to have out, and it influences so many different stages of the game. And then we have the Mage Dancer. Again, it is an absolutely remarkable card, and every time you roll with your hero, it gets a +1. If you roll with your Trickster, it gets +1. Croupier, +1. You're rolling with the Tanuki, +1. It seems like the same slide because it almost is the same. It is the same slide. You're benefiting so much from these rolls. You All In it gets +1, and then gets the benefit of the All In. You play Asmodeus, it gets +1 just because Asmodeus has to come out and roll from both reserve and from hand. This Mage Dancer absolutely carries from this cost. It's crazy what it does. And every time you're rolling, it's just getting a benefit, okay? So again, that's why the landmark is so good too, because you just want to keep rolling. You don't want to feel hesitant to roll because something like the Mage Dancer really wants it. And then Hathor. Hathor, I think, is a card that at first glance, a lot of people are not going to be high on. They're likely to start like, using it as mana and stuff like that, but it actually is a good card. There's a bunch of stuff that only really work from hand that you really want to do very often. And so if you have Hathor and it's sitting in your reserve and you get a Lyra Cloth Dancer, then yes, absolutely, sending the effect, putting the Lyra Cloth Dancer back in your hand, and then having something else turn fleeting is really awesome. Like, these are good effects, right? The Croupier can give you hand advantage. Esmeralda can resupply. Tanuki, instead of rolling the dice, let's say you don't have the Ouroboros out, and you're like, I don't want to roll the dice and I have to get rid of that Atlas, you can discard Hathor, right? Bring Tanuki back to hand and just play it down as a hand effect and guarantee you get rid of the Atlas, right? So really kind of versatile card that I think people generally sleep on. In my experiences playing other people playing this starter deck, and they're like, I'm just gonna mana this. I'm like, man, that's pretty good actually. And it's interesting what it can do for your hand state and of course how you can influence the game and your reserve. And then finally, we do have the Hatter. This card, again, I have a ho-hum relationship with. You can target the Mage Dancer, you can target the Ouroboros Trickster, especially when you all-in these cards. So if, let's say, you all-in the Ouroboros Trickster, it gets massive, it's carrying a location all by itself. You can then use the Hatter to anchor it in place, and those statistics will carry over multiple turns. That is super valuable, right? Asmodeus already comes out with the potential opportunity to get anchored, and you have double the chance if you have the Bastion as well. So, like, I understand the interest in the Hatter. I just find that it's very oppressive cost at 5 cost for the stats it's providing. Makes it very difficult in the event that your board state doesn't allow for you to anchor something, right? And therefore, you're playing this very suboptimal line that ultimately is probably just going to rot in your reserve until you have a better play. So there are times where the Hatter is, a good card, a card that really locks down that Mage Dancer that's absolutely going insane. And other times, it feels like the worst card you could possibly have. Let's take a look at our live gameplay example. All right, so for our game here, we're against Ortis. We're going to get rid of the Hatter. I think we're going to get rid of the Skuld as well and one of the Tricksters. The reason why is Hathor into Tanuki should be able to disrupt their reserve pretty effectively here. So let's go with this line. They're going to be starting with the token, of course. Kind of expensive for us to try to compete there. We do not want to go Tanuki yet. Hathor. We probably just roll the Ouroboros Trickster. We'll go on the right side here. The Gatekeeper allows them to pretty effectively counter us. So they have so many good cards. Oh my gosh, that is not what we want. That is an absolute disaster. We're hoping for a little better than that next time. But hey, when we're playing this deck, you have to just embrace the RNG. You got to embrace the RNG. And they are going to play the Frog, which will advance us because of the mountains, unless they have a Trooper they're willing to play now, which is kind of expensive for them. We'll see. They're going to double advance, but us advancing too, considering we low rolled, is not the worst thing that could have happened. We also have Tanuki we can use to target the Frog Prince. They will have initiative, however. Okay, we drew 2 very good cards in the rare Ouroboros Trickster and, of course, the Mage Dancer, both of which are fantastic. Tanuki, I think I want because we want to get rid of their cards in reserve. We might have to get rid of the Hathor play here, despite the fact that I actually do like Hathor. But ultimately, we're going to have to put it down. Okay, they play the Gatekeeper, and this is what I was referring to prior, where the Gatekeeper is very effective at attacking multiple locations here. Now, we're in a situation where I think we probably just get rid of the Frog Prince. They need to advance water. The Tanuki does not advance water, but we can use the Trickster to do so. Playing Tanuki on the left will guarantee that we at least advance. We won't be able to stop them, but let's get rid of this Frog Prince here. What I think we also do here is, because they're trying to advance on water with the Gatekeeper, we're going to play the Trickster onto the right side. That'll allow us to roll here. And we unfortunately low roll again, which is heartbreaking. Certainly we can't low roll another time, right? Let's roll this die here and hopefully get between 2 and 5. Okay, we do get the 5. We get the boost. That means we will be progressing there and blocking them. That ultimately was a pretty strong turn. We get the double advancement on the left, but we will be advancing on the right. Okay, we'll accept that. We have Hathor and Asmodeus. Asmodeus just a little too expensive at this point of the game. We will put it down as mana. We have to be very cognizant of their Ortis Spy. Hathor is going to be a little slow to get to reserve to bring Tanuki back to hand. We will play Tanuki onto the right side. Despite the fact that he's not competing with water, he is going to at least give us some pressure to advance there. They do go with the Bastion, so they're going to be committing everything on this turn. So we need to double progress here. They have one there. We just need to basically just roll on it. Do we use the Trickster? Do we just use Hathor? I'm just thinking. I think we hold the Trickster. What we do is we play the Mage Dancer on the left. We're going to have to roll into it. Regardless if we hit Anchored or we hit the boost, it's fine. The only thing that would be absolutely destructive would be us hitting a 1. We've already rolled 1 like this game, so certainly we can't just keep rolling 1, right? Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Okay, so that is an absolute disaster. A literal absolute disaster. There is nothing short of just tears being shed for me, because that is, oh, but that's what Lyra does. That's literally what Lyra does. Like that is basically the game thrown, because they played the Bastion, they played the Monolith, sorry, which means that like they simply have the advantage now. There's nothing I can do to win this game, and we needed to advance there to at least potentially win this upcoming match. Now we are absolutely cursed, and I can't believe it. I can't believe it. But you know, there's a chance we pull this out. But this is a very tilting archetype to play sometimes, especially without the Ouroboros ourselves. We are in big trouble. They play the Rat from hand as a 1 cost just to poke a little bit. Now that is very good for us, to be honest with you, because that means that we can actually Tanuki this Gatekeeper, who honestly would have been so much better than playing that Rat. They're going to regret doing that. They have another Gatekeeper. Of course they do. Why wouldn't they have an additional Gatekeeper? Why wouldn't they? This makes things so much harder here. It's very unlikely we're able to compete in both locations now. We can only advance 1. They have water locked down on the right. No matter what, they're going to double advance. Will the Mage Dancer right? We're going to roll on Tanuki. Never a 1, please. Oh my gosh. I can't believe it. I literally can't believe it. It's okay. This is exactly what this deck does. I'm not tilted, you're tilted. Oh no. Okay. We've lost. Like this is hopeless now. This is so ridiculous. What hope do I have? Chronicler going down as mana. Maybe we can make some magic happen, but they literally have a fantastic hand here from reserve. They're going to be adding so much value to the board. There is literally no hope for me, but we're going to try. We're going to try. We never give up here. We're going to go Asmodeus on the left here. This is awful, because now they're just gonna play this right. We just lose, but anyways, let's just keep playing. Let's keep playing. All right, let's do another roll just for funsies. See if we can at least stop the progression left, which is borderline impossible. We lose this game no matter what, but certainly, oh look at that, a 3. How exciting. Well, this was an absolutely cursed gameplay example, but it was a lesson as to what this deck does. It can be extremely infuriating when you low roll like that. We didn't get the Ouroboros, which really protects us from those types of low rolls. And look at the result. We got absolutely demolished, and I'm sure you felt the pain just as I did. All right, let's try this again. We've got ourselves a match against Ortis. We're going to be getting rid of... Oh, I don't want to get rid of the Asmodeus, but it is a little expensive at this point in the game. Hatter's too expensive. Chronicler, Croupier is not horrible. These are pretty horrible. This is a horrible draw here. Might have to keep Asmodeus just because it's a decent play, but we're going to give up another location to do so. This is too expensive. And I think what we do is we get rid of the Chronicler. Don't love that those decisions there. Very difficult decisions from a mana perspective. Asmodeus is a great card, especially the rare. It's hard to give that up on the opening draw there. Okay, they're playing recruits. I'm not going to be able to stop their double advancement. At the risk of a trooper counteracting us, We are going to play the Scald here, which even if they play a Trooper, it will advance on the forest here. We'll see what they do. We can also roll to try to prevent the Trooper from advancing. Okay, they've passed their turn. What we're going to do is we do have to roll here. Rolling on this token will perhaps give us an opportunity to block the token's advancement. And we got a 1. I can't believe this continues to happen. I cannot believe this continues to happen. I've done nothing but roll 1s. I've done nothing but roll 1s in this video. I can't believe it. I'm not giving up hope yet, even though Order's just double advanced on us, and it's by far the best starter deck in the game. I won't lose hope. I still believe. Kind of. Maybe. I'm not sure. All right. Because they do have the Order's Spy, I'm going to play the Skuldo first. It is not great in the right location because of the fact that they can just do a single point and mount in advance. But we'll do this because we just have to do it. We could roll again to try to prevent an easy advance there. They're going to do the Order's Cadets. They will, no matter what, advance there. We are advancing ourselves, so we're currently trading that location there. We can just go Hathor on the left. Because we're already losing on the right side, we can consider rolling to take a shot at anchoring it. If not, it goes to reserve and whatever. The boosts are useless. Reserve and anchoring is fine. Okay, so we are going to prevent the advancement on the left side. We are going to advance ourselves. They're going to advance on the right. It's okay. They did have to use their cadets twice. They have their frog prints available for future play here. They're going to take initiative. We're going to draw 2. Let's see what we get. We do have the Hatter. We have Esmeralda. Hatter has got to go. It will not anchor the Asmodeus. Moreover, we don't have any of our kind of scaling 1-drops like Trickster or the Mage Dancer, so it will be Hatter that has to be put down as mana. See you later. Jeanne d'Arc coming out. Very slow card here, but ultimately very powerful. They're attempting to advance on the forest and the mountains. We don't have the right cards to answer that. We can stop it. So what we can do here is we can prevent them from advancing by doing this. Okay. See what they do. This is actually a pretty solid play here. We are going to play the Esmeralda. We're going to resupply. Okay. We get the Trickster. We're going to activate our ability. We're going to roll here. We're going to try and see if we get the +1s. Okay, we do. So we advance there. We advance on both. Okay, that was actually a very well-played turn. Look, they're going pretty wide here. I'm imagining they're holding a charge here, which is going to be pretty good for them. We have to hold on to Pain Prison. I think what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of Hathor here as mana. We are in big trouble if they charge right off the rip. Very hard for us to deal with it. Just thinking about how we want to handle this turn here. We do have a very good location for Esmeralda just to do a little poke here. I don't think we can play Asmodeus. It's just simply too expensive. So we'll do this. This is the type of turn where we probably have to just, oh, they do have the Order Spy. That is what we expected. Eventually the Spy to kind of come out. I think what we do is we play the Lyra Cloth Dancer on the right side. Frog Prince cannot deal with it. We're going to give Fleeting to the Order Spy. So we will advance on the right more than likely. Yeah, so they do play that. They still advance. We still advance. Do we do a roll here? I don't think it's worth rolling and running the risk of anything getting destroyed. We have the progression. We pass. They should pass as well. A Trooper wouldn't stop us in mountains, so I think we pass. Okay, afternoon's ended. They're going to advance left and right. And we're going to advance on the right. So we are in trouble here, but that Jeanne d'Arc turn makes things very difficult for us. If they played out next turn, we have to double advance and somehow prevent the next turn from being a complete disaster, especially if they draw into charge. So this next turn is very hard. Jeanne d'Arc is so good with charge. It makes it very difficult for us. We have Asmodeus that will win there, and we can maybe hope to trade. I mean, the problem is we'd have to roll to even give this the +1 to win on the forest. We could alternately do the Trickster. We have to do Asmodeus on the left side. All right, it's anchored. They do throw down the rat. We go Trickster on the right. Low roll, but you know what? At least it's stats. They pass. We roll Asmodeus. We want 2 through 5. Without the Ouroboros, this is very stressful. Okay, we get 2. We will progress there. We stop them. So we double progress. We needed a win on that turn. This next turn is very hard, especially with that Jeanne d'Arc generating as much value as it does. Because if they have charge, which is likely, they're going to be already starting with a tremendous board presence, charge +1s across the board for 2 energy. It's just a lot. It's a lot. We can't really deal with it very effectively. We can play for tiebreaker by absolutely going insane on Asmodeus. That is an option. Given that this is the last turn, Pain Prison has to go. We were holding the Pain Prison to disrupt their landmarks. They didn't end up playing a landmark here. Jeanne d'Arc, though, put up so much points. They certainly have a win condition available to them with charge. Considering we're in mountains here, I do think we have to play the Cloth Dancer here just to set up a nice mountain strength to at least try to advance there. We play the Trickster on the right. We still have enough mana. That'll drop us to the 5. And then we have enough for exactly... No, we won't. We'll be short 1 on the Lyra Cloth Dancer. So they're going to open the gates. This is an open the gates and charge combo. I don't think we'll be able to compete here. They'll only have 4 power there, so we should be able to compete there. I am going to go Trickster onto the right side. Let's hope for a very preferable roll here. Again, our rolls have been absolutely terrible today. Okay. Again, low rolled. Unfortunate. It is what it is. They have to play their charge here. Kakoba. They don't have charge. They do not have charge. We win the game. I was just going to say, that is absolutely crazy. So they've conceded the game. Not having charge completely destroyed them. I'm not sure if they managed them or not. This was a charged board state if I've ever seen one. And we were just going to all in on the Ouroboros Trickster. It would have basically allowed us to advance on the right. They would have not been able to advance on the right, and we would have connected. They wouldn't have. That is wild, guys, because this game looked so cursed at the start. So unbelievably cursed. Almost to the point that you give the thought of, like, should you just concede here? Like, do you just concede after, you know, rolling that 1 on Lyra and just completely blowing up your entire board state? But we stuck through. We end up getting the win, and I bet you they mana'd their charge at some point, and they're regretting it. And that's why I've said a million times that the mana decision-making in this game is by far the most important decision that you can make. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I got another video for you on the screen, and we'll see you in that next one.